Hi, everybody. This is Susan Clinton, one of your hosts for Tough to Treat. This is podcast number 160, and I thought I would pop this little nugget in this week to just give you an overview of the referral pattern of the cervical nucleus of the trigeminal system. I know I talk about it at various times throughout the podcast with the neck and the upper neck, as well as the vestibular, ocular, cervical reflex. So I hope you enjoy this, and I hope it sheds some light on this amazing system. Thank you so much. Enjoy the podcast. So now what we're going to be looking at is referred nociception central sensitization of the trigeminal system. Okay, so this is the work from Earl Pettman, and I told you he deals with a lot of motor vehicle accidents, people who have suffered motor vehicle accidents and people with whiplash affective disorder. And cats are no longer the predator to man, although that may not be the truth in Southern California, since they decided to put the mountain lion back into the mix here, and people are starting to get drug off their bicycles. They don't know that they're living in 2020. They think they're living where they go after people. But anyway, the new predator to man, as far as I'm concerned, is automobiles. And if you think about it, more people die in car accidents than anything else, except, of course, now the pandemic. But before the pandemic, it was certainly motor vehicle accidents. All wars, everything, more people die in motor vehicle accidents than anything else. And when you think about it, if somebody is coming up upon your car, which is usually from the back end, from the back left or the back right, there's always this kind of motion that goes to look back up into the mirror, or look back behind, triggering that whole, cascade of events of flight or fight. So he looks at trauma to the upper cervical spine as something that can set up a higher gain or a higher sensitivity in the trigeminal ganglion that is sitting in the upper cervical area. Okay, just like the C5, C6 nerve root. Can bring a cascade of effects down the arm, but it has nothing to do with the arm. It's just where the symptoms are being expressed. So he's looking at the fact that the upper cervical spine may have had trauma. As we move forward, you'll see kind of how it kind of comes in for lack of rotation for other things as well. So you get convergence at that trigeminocervical nucleus that I just talked about. That's where the convergence occurs. And now where the symptoms get expressed can be anywhere along the trigeminal system. And thinking that the trigeminal system is a sensory experience for all of the cranial nerves, now you understand why headaches, eye pain, changes of taste, blurry hearing, like it feels like I almost have like kind of a glass over my ear. Why am I dizzy? Why do I feel funny? What's going on with all of this stuff? And then this is stuff that people go, oh, you're just crazy. Just, go smile more. And so that's where the trigeminal symptoms are. And then we have other cranial nerve symptoms through interconnecting synapses. So remember, it's the sensory thing, so we can start affecting the other cranial nerves. And remembering that the vestibular system is part of the cranial nerve system. The ocular system is part of the cranial nerve system, and the upper cervical spine is as well. So we can have an ability to, we can see how this whole system can really start to affect this. Another thing to consider is that this is just some information. You can read more about it. I'm not going to go through all of those slides and read all that stuff. But here's just a little thing. So glossopharyngeal, here's the vagus, and here's the accessory. You remember these guys from that picture? That they were all coming out of the head at the same place. The accessory, the vagus, the glossopharyngeal, and the hypoglossal would be in here too. And here's the pharyngeal and the laryngeal. So now we're seeing how all of this stuff can affect voice. And then it affects the ear, the tympanic, it affects the eyes, the auricular. So all of these things can be affected by the trigeminal system. And it's really quite important to kind of pay attention to that, because it really will make a difference in what's happening with symptom expression. Here's another look just at the trigeminal system itself. So we have the main sensory nucleus here in the brainstem, and the mesencephalic nucleus that's going to help govern patterning for what the sensory experience is coming through the system. So remember, all convergence is happening here at the spinal nucleus, and all sensory information that the brain deals with, besides intrinsically, the sensory information intrinsically that the brain deals with, comes through the spine, into the brainstem, and goes to the thalamus. So this area has a chance to actually interact again in the thalamus to change that sensory experience. And this is where a lot of patterning comes up. This is why we hold areas that are painful. This is why we splint. These are kinds of some of the things. And this nucleus of the trigeminal system has a great deal to do with that when it enters the thalamus, and the sensory experience is acted on and sent, by the basal ganglia, metacognition, and everything else, and sent back down the chain for behavioral expression of the movement system. So then we have the main sensory nucleus, which goes out to all of these things, and then we have the trigeminal ganglion itself, which is the motor. Your typical CV, cranial nerve 5, that one, that's the typical motor. And then the sensory provides all of that, all of the sensory stuff to the CV branches of the motor, but it also interacts with all of the other nuclei of the cranial nerves all the way up and down wherever they may be located. Okay, because it sends out little things to here and 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 here and here and here, and they all come back into here, and it all makes, it's all that whole chemical soup that works that way. And this is all information that's coming from the body and converging in here in the spinal nucleus around C1, C2, C3. Okay, so now you can see how we have a trigeminal system that's running out of control. We have the foot on the gas pedal. This is going to raise the gain in this trigeminal system. And it does it on purpose, because if it can interact with the eyes and the ears and the skin, the feeling in the skin of the face, and the respiratory system here in the pons, and the reticular activating system, which lives in the pons here, and all of these things, it's there for a reason, right? It's there for that, boom, we got to act kind of thing. Or maybe we just need to put on the gas pedal for just a little bit. I just need to perform. I need to stand up in front of a crowd and talk. I need to be aware of where my kids are at all time, but I don't need to be way up here for that to happen. I just need to be right here. It's got all of this ability to do all of that. But if we've got our foot on the gas pedal all the time, this system is going to be always on. And even when we and if we do that for long enough, even when we take our foot off the gas, this thing still runs in the background. And one of the best ways to pick it up is your heart rate. Stephen Porges, who wrote all the stuff on polyvagal theory, talks a lot about heart rate and long exhales. Long exhales will bring your heart rate down, as we all know from heart rate variability. And he talks about a lot of work with long exhales and a lot of work of just, talking and woodwind, breath instruments and singing and different ways to be able to come into the system and turn this off. And his work has shown that even when people have, he's done some work. I think the story I'll tell is the one about somebody with tooth pain. And you can imagine that's kind of a direct sensory input into the trigeminal system, because it's the mouth. And we're very sensitive in our mouth. And so our brain gives us an experience and it says, oh, we've had this before and we don't like this. This is ugly. That means the damn dentist. I'm not, and also all the emotions are getting attached to this information coming in from the mouth. And so now it's turning into a huge pain response because the brain is registering threat. Like, it's got all those negative emotions on there and it's registering threat. You go to the dentist, you get the tooth taken care of, the sensory input changes, the threat level comes down. But he says that, watch, because he's done some studies where he's looked at heart rate on these people even as much as a week later, and the heart rate still hasn't come down. So the system is and that for that whatever reason can get super sensitive. And so he says it takes intervention to bring that down, and people need, and they said this is the story about continuing running into issues in our environment that makes us raise our gain up all the time, but when do we ever intentionally bring it down? We never really get a chance to do that unless we come in with intention to do that. And so that's why a lot of our clients and us struggle, because we didn't think that these things that should be happening normally, really over time may have to require some intention to come in and settle it and soothe it, so that we can, get a change there with that. So one of the things that you want to think about is that here's the lateral spinal thalamic tract, and this is the ventral trigeminal lemniscus. What does that mean? That means that this tract here and that this tract here and this tract here converge at a whole bunch of different places in the spinal cord. All right? The lateral spinal thalamic tract, we used to say it was the pain tract. It's a tract that brings nociceptive information to the brainstem. All right? Comes up, and here we go. It comes in and it comes over. And remember, it crosses over. This is one of the things that the spinal thalamic tract does. And so the ventral trigeminal lemniscus does the same thing, and they come over, and so they converge here, and they converge here at the substantia gelatinosa. This is the big place for chemical soup, for somatic crosstalk, and eventually somatic visceral crosstalk. But this is the big area. Then they go up, and see, now we're at the spinal nucleus of the fifth cranial nerve here. Okay? So this can happen anywhere in the body over here. This can happen anywhere in the body. But as it comes up through this area, you can see that this ventral trigeminal lemniscus has an ability to come in and interact with that processing and that information all the way up into the brainstem. So, but it starts here at this spinal nucleus. So it can increase or decrease the gain on that nociceptive input. And that's where things start getting crazy, because if we have a higher gain on the nociceptive input, and this is starting to ramp it up from here to here to here to here to here, then the message that the brainstem is getting up here is that the threat level is really high, right? Really high. And now, guess what? We have convergence through all of this. So we're going to get, it's going to affect the main sensory nucleus here. And then that's going to spread out and go to all the cranial nerves, including the sensory experience for the ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular pieces of the trigeminal nerve system. So here's some interesting things. Why do people on long trips have to chew food? How many of you taken a long car trip? And what did you have in the car to eat? Most of the time, people are gonna and this is true. If you look in Pennsylvania, we have these travel centers. They have them all over Ohio too. We travel from Pennsylvania to northern Michigan several times a year because we have land up there on the St. Mary's River. And it's a long drive. It's a 10-hour drive, of which I refuse to do. I make a stop somewhere because I can't stand it. And in every travel center and every place where you stop to get gas, every single one of them have up front in their display center all the very crunchy things. Potato chips, corn nuts. You don't find corn nuts anywhere in the world except at these travel centers, right? And why are they there? Because crunching wakes you up. It's a direct input into the trigeminal system, into the reticular activating system at the pons, and wakes you up. People do it to wake up. But if you chew gum all day long, that may be more input to your sympathetic nervous system than you need. When people are chewing gum a lot, I always ask the question, why are you chewing gum? Why do you chew on the end of your pencil? Why? People who are chronic chewers, what's going on? And that may be something that they need to there may be something running high in the background. These oral masticatory things are, kind of an expression, a motor expression of a trigeminal system that's got a higher gain. When you see people start to get angry, what happens in their jaw? Right? You start to see that, clenching of the jaw and that, kind of running thing. And the eyes change, right? They start to dilate a little bit, and the motor expression around the eyes get bigger. So you can always kind of tell, by somebody's eyes, how they're reacting to things. And, you know, and all of this is all trigeminal run. So it's all very interesting because we want to try to like find out what's happening for that, and then be able to kind of say, is that a place where we need to intervene, or is that a symptom that we want to watch go down? But I like to tie all of that stuff to what's going on with our heart rate as well, because that's a metric that they can take. Anybody can feel their pulse. They can all do it. You know, again, I would say 90% of my clients are wearing wearable technology, you know, and but none of them are using the heart rate part. They're just not. They're focusing on steps, and they're focusing on, maybe sometimes they're focusing on quality of sleep, but they're not focusing on, you know, the heart rate part, which is, I think, kind of important.